Hello and welcome to IBTimes TV. I'm Leanna Brinder, Business Editor for the International Business Times. Joining me now is Mark Artus. He's a Chief Executive at OneHQ. So hi, thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Well, we're in a very exciting field and we're talking about branding and advertising, but maybe you can set the scene and tell me how companies' marketing and advertising and branding budgets have transformed over the last 5 years.
I mean, it's an interesting time. I think it's a seminal time for our business, predominantly driven by the fragmentation of media. And so I think that as companies struggle to get to their audience, it's making them really think hard about how they allocate their budgets and where the best spend is going to be.
Well, there are some pockets of opportunity out there in terms of digital spending that they can do, but some companies still feel that it's a bit of a risk. Can you maybe tell me about some places that, or sectors that provide, I suppose, a challenge as well as an opportunity?
Well, again, I mean, at the moment, brands are trying to work out how they can have conversations with their customers. I think Keith Weed has recently written an article on the idea of humanization. How do you treat people as human beings rather than just consumers? So it's you, it's your brother, it's your sister, your mother. How do you have those conversations? And I think that brands are really trying to work out how to have human conversations to define why they matter in people's lives. I think it's been, in the past, budgets have been spent to sort of create awareness, which is really important. But I think once people enter a store and they want to purchase a product, it's just incredibly important that that conversation happens so that they're not being talked at anymore, but they're being included in the conversation and kind of making them matter to the process.
Well, part of that is actually having conversation via social media. And actually there was a new WPP report out, a research report, about how a lot of companies are still being seen as possibly not using social media in the correct way. How do you view social media in terms of building a company's brand and getting a message across, as well as having that conversation?
Well, it's just one form of channel. I think that, you know, everybody has sort of fallen in love with the idea of digital, but digital is just a channel, a way of getting to talk to consumers. And so I think social media is about people having the opportunity to recommend, to find trust, to create your own sort of inner circle to help you make decisions. And I think social media is helping that to happen. I think it's really a way to help people make decisions before they kind of get to the final yard of whether it's in front of a bank manager or whether it's in front of trying to buy something in a store. I think it's a way for people to better prepare themselves and to use their own infrastructure, family, friends, to sort of get the right recommendations for how and what they should purchase.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like you're still very much a very big supporter of very traditional, I suppose, in terms of advertising with the complement of digital. But do you see there being a bigger shift in terms of going towards, let's say, I suppose a bit more of the creative side of like in-game branding and advertising to certain forms of creative content rather than TV and print?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, I don't think I'm an advocate of the traditional values. I think that, you know, I think social media it's providing kind of platforms for video content. I think absolutely the digital channel it's just going to become ubiquitous soon. You know, it's available to all of us. It's just certainly probably for my age and for my kind of age group. It's sort of we think analog and then we apply digital thinking. I think my children are certainly being brought up in a digital age where they don't have any boundaries between how they get their information. They go online and they go and find it, or they talk to their friends, and it's streamed into them, and it's a natural process. So I think the digital channel, it's a ubiquitous thing. I think the smart thing is going to be how people actually use it. I don't think smartphones have been used anywhere near to their capabilities yet, beyond price promotion and giving vouchers. I know that's a bit of a generalization, but I do believe that it's going to have to be more than that. It's going to be about how do you enhance the experience? How do brands, again, truly have conversations with you rather than talking at you and trying to sell you or compare the price with somebody else? Because the price comparison isn't necessarily a sustainable concept, because as soon as everybody tries to get the lowest price, it all falls apart, because there can only be one EDLP, or everyday low price. And so how can the digital channel help create more of an experience? How can it help you better make decisions? How can it have a better one-on-one relationship with you so that you become more of an advocate for the brand that you're looking at the time?
Sure. With pitfalls for some brands, where do you think some brands have failed, or maybe there's certain, I suppose, problems that they're not properly overcoming?
Well, I mean, that's a broad question. I think, you know, it's sort of interesting. A lot of marketeers are talking about a guy called Simon Sinek at the moment. Now, he's been around for a long time, but he basically defined what was called the golden circle. And the golden circle was all about the idea of putting the why at the heart of why you exist. And there are some brilliant brands out there that have been successful because they've always understood why they exist. There are many brands out there that haven't survived because they never really defined why they should exist. They've always talked about the how or what it is they do. And so I think understanding why brands exist and why they're going to matter in our lives is going to be vitally important.
Sure, and I suppose looking into the future, I mean, this is quite broad, but where do you see the future of branding in terms of whether there's certain opportunities that's only developing now that you see is going to be huge in the future, or a certain type of audience that needs to be tapped into a bit better?
I don't know. I mean, I truly do believe, I think this humanization is a big deal. I think the whole idea that brands can have conversations is really important. I think the idea that a brand in today's market, because of the fragmentation, really does need to know why it exists. You know, look at Kodak. I mean, Kodak is one of those classic stories where we all knew what it stood for, and it was for making films and making negatives. And you know, they were the guys that invented the digital camera, yet their business was about the analog format of it, and it fell to pieces. Whereas you look at brands, and yeah, it's terrible to keep citing it, but Apple, you can't help but admire them because they always defined why they should exist in people's lives. You know, they were there to challenge the norm, to challenge the kind of everyday process. And so they really understood that, which allowed them to do the how and the what. Virgin is another great example of a brand that absolutely knows what they stand for, which allows them to do all of the interesting things they do and make us relatively loyal to them because we sort of like those brands. And if you dig down, it's because we sort of feel that we are living with them. They're part of us and part of our lifestyles, rather than some of the big IBMs that tend to talk at you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today.
Okay, thank you very much.
And that was Mark Artus. He's the CEO of 1HQ.